So when we talk about the board member election and the timing of the annual meeting, let's look at this XYZ Association deal here. And we're going to assume, for the sake of conversation, that their fiscal year ends on the 31st of December. So everything kind of keys on that. And they're down near the middle of that page, it talks about the annual meeting. This association has chosen to have their annual meeting on the 28th of February. So let's block that off here. I'll put a big A in here. That'll be the annual meeting date. And if we set that date, then we have some things we have to look at, because prior to the annual meeting is we have to get the notice of meeting out. So the Civil Code says we have 10 days that the notice of meeting has to go out. But then now we have this ballot measure, which has the ballot in it. The ballot requires 30 days to be in their hands. So we need to back up a little bit and make sure we've got it. 30 days back, we'll go back to here, or maybe here. And then we can't just mail this thing out here without talking about it first. So we better have some discussion about it here. And then in order to get the ballot prepared, you need to have a confirmation of the slate. So I would think that you'd mark this meeting to be sure the slate's been confirmed, that all the names have been submitted, that of the volunteers who want to serve on the board, and the slate is prepared. That's discussed at this meeting here. And then, of course, well, wait a minute, we can't even have a slate until we have a call for nominations, right? So now let's back up a little bit further. And I'll just use this calendar here as my example. So we'll go back to December of the prior year. And we have to have that ballot out for 30 days. Let's see here. We were going to mail that ballot sometime around the 27th of January. So maybe along about the 27th or 28th of December, we probably ought to get something. Well, we better back it up to here. Now I've got to have some time for them to put their names into the association. So I better back up a little bit further. So now we're back into November for something that's not going to happen till February. Huh? And then I need to give my manager some time to get their part done. As a board, we're going to discuss the matter and approve it at a qualified board meeting. And then my manager is going to have some time to get things done. Well, if I tell him I want it mailed out the day after the meeting, I'm in trouble. He or she can't possibly get the work done that has to get done in one day or one portion of a day. So if we expect that to get mailed out like on the 30th, this date might be fine. But if it's not fine, you may have to back it up one more. Get your approval process for the call for nominations here so that he can get it mailed out maybe up in here somewhere. And then you can check on the progress of it at this meeting here. Then he pulls it all together and gets the slate prepared so you see the final slate, and then you're ready to get your mailing out back in that week. You see how that all comes together? It's an amazing thing to look at when you see a calendar and see how the dates get backed up. Then, of course, there's the appointment of inspector of elections. And it's interesting, some documents specify right in the documents that at the annual meeting this year, we're going to appoint the inspector for next year, so that inspector's on duty for a full year. Others don't have anything at all. I checked the Civil Code. It says you can appoint them right there at the meeting. That's fine. But the truth is, the inspector is the guy who qualifies the ballots, right? The inspector technically holds on to the ballots and then qualifies each signature on the ballot and then decides who's eligible to vote and who's not eligible to vote. Well, of course, we know that isn't really how it works. Your manager and the management company help store the ballots, and then somebody's appointed to be on the inspector, and they're handed the ballots at the last minute. But when we look at the technical side of it, the fact is that there's an inspector has a job to do. And in order to make them do that job correctly, you want to, again, knowing your meeting is here, be sure your inspector is picked up far enough back, maybe even back in December, so that they're on board for what's going to happen. If your association has your ballots mailed to the inspector's private address, then you better have them chosen back here so that you can get the address on the ballot, on the envelope. So again, marking your calendar to know when the inspector is chosen is also part of what you need to be tracking and aware of. In some associations, the board doesn't get involved in this whole nominating process. There's this air of it's a good old boys club, so we want to dispel that good old boys club thought, so we're going to put this outside group as our nominating committee, and then the call for nominations and all the nominations would funnel through that committee, and they would help qualify the candidates and do all that stuff. If you're choosing to have a nominating committee, be sure you figure out when that person's going to be chosen or that committee is going to be chosen so that, again, it fits on the calendar in time to get things done. The only days that you all do work has this blue square around it at the meeting. We don't conduct business between meetings. You might do some side work between meetings to get some processes done, but your discussions all happen at board meetings. So if you know you're going to get something done in the latter part of a month, you're not going to tell the board about it until the next meeting. And if there's some action to be taken up here, you can't take the action about the board approving it. The meeting's not till the next week. We knew about it, so it's not an emergency. We better plan to approve the action here, even though it's not due until here. And then if we're going to approve it here, we better back up to the previous month to get it assigned, so somebody's working on it to get it approved. Am I catching anybody's attention here about the calendar? And how you have to look back to see what we're going to do and when we're going to do it, and understand that if we're going to do business according to the rules, which is business gets done at a board meeting, then you've got to look at when your board meetings are, figure out when things have to get done, and then back up to the next meeting prior to make sure things get done at a board meeting. I should mention, I know we talked a lot about the election process at a recent meeting, so I think we're pretty clear on that if all of you were here for that. But the preparation of that ballot is important. I think that to ask your manager to prepare the ballot based on what nominations he or she received and the board not discuss it is inappropriate. It's easy and it's convenient, but it's really not appropriate. I think as a board, you should actually tell your manager, here's the slate for election, please prepare the ballot with these names on it. So it gets entered in the minutes that you've talked about it. It just shows good due process and transparency when you do those kinds of things at a meeting.